This is Capturing Light, episode number 141.
Welcome to Capturing Light, a director of photographers podcast, spotlighting cinematography tips, tools, and techniques, inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. And now, your host, Les Gaddis.
Welcome to the Capturing Light podcast. I'm your host, Les Gaddis, and today I just wanted to talk a little bit, give an overall picture of what my findings have been in cinematography. I've had quite a few questions socially just about my thoughts, and I figured I'd just ramble for a little bit about cinematography and hopefully, for the newer listeners, they'll get some nuggets. This might be an intro to cinematography podcast. So for all the more advanced listeners, I appreciate you. And thank you for sticking with me through this episode. But I just wanted to give a quick overview of what cinematography means to me and what it is. And before I get into that, I had a thought. Just because podcasting, for the most part, is a one-way communication tool. Usually I'm in the studio talking to myself and hoping that people out there in the world are listening. Now, I understand and I get that people are listening because I get the metrics and, I know that, there's different people in different parts of the world that listen based off of the metrics. But with that being said, there's no way of commenting or unless you reach out to me on social, I feel more times than most like no one's really listening, even though the numbers are telling me otherwise. Or like, for instance, I was on a shoot last week and I was talking to a person and introduced myself as Les. We were talking throughout the shoot as we were wrapping up. We connected on Instagram and, that person, they were like, wait, your last name Gaddis? Wait, do you have a podcast? I've listened to your podcast. And it was just like one of those, I guess people do listen to the podcast type situations. But with this long ass ramble, if you listen to the podcast and you have listened to the podcast for a little bit, what I want you to do is just go to my Instagram, Les Gaddis. Find me on Instagram. Find a random picture, find a post, just, something that's there, and put a little light bulb emoji. And that way I'll know that you are a listener of the podcast because it's kind of random-ish and not many people use that. But that'll just kind of remind me that, for one, I need to be more consistent at publishing these podcasts because that's a thing. But then also, too, it'll kind of just continue to inspire me to do these because I enjoy it and I appreciate everyone that's been listening. So that was a super long tangent, but we'll go back into cinematography and what I think it is. And man, cinematography is a lot of things. And I'll just give you like quick overview of some of the things it entails. It's understanding the camera, obviously. It's composition, it's lighting, it's camera movement, it's framing and just understanding the different shot types, lenses and focal lengths. It's knowing and controlling your depth of field. It's understanding color and just not jacking up your white balance. It's technical for sure, so you have to manage your exposure for sure. But with that technical aspect, there's also a creative side in storytelling, and storytelling is a huge part of it as well. Um, and cinematography is not just about on the day. It's, like prepping and knowing where the sun's going to be. Um, it's location scouting, and understanding what you need to do in those situations, and tech scouting. And just like on the pre-pro side, you need to understand the post side of things too, like sequencing. How are these shots going to come together? Color. Like, yes, you may have a cool camera, but what does the color science of that camera, do when you start tweaking and pulling it certain directions? So being able to control the image from concept to print, or render or export. Um, and then, like also the continued learning and constantly practicing, because in this industry, there is so much that happens and so much that changes. I mean, I've been podcasting since 2015, I think, and I just think back at what I was doing in 2015. Like, it seems so long ago, and partly because it is. But man, has technology just changed and shifted, and cameras and, like phones, drones, just all these different things. And, you just have to kind of stay on top of it. I mean, you don't have to know everything, but being a student of the industry is something that can take you a long way if you plan on being a cinematographer full time, or staying in this industry for quite some time. So with those points, which I think, what was it? It was like 10, 11, 12, 13 points that I had written down. I'm just going to talk a little bit about each. So that way, for, I guess, the beginner to intermediate people out there that, know how to get around a film set, just a reminder of certain things to keep in mind. And this is kind of going to be like a refresher slash recall of things in my mind, because I just wrote down topics. I didn't necessarily write down anything else other than, hey, this is the topic. Let's just see what comes to mind. So with that being said, let's start with understanding the camera. That is pretty basic. You need to know how the camera works. You need to be familiar with the camera. You don't want to be on set and trying to figure out things, because that's what prep is for. Like, if you don't know where the record button is, get the camera and, look at it, study it, figure out where all the buttons are. Obviously, cinematography is kind of like riding a bike or driving a car. As long as you know how to drive a car, you can get to where you need to go. But, there's different cars, different interiors, different, like all the things. So, just understanding your camera and the key principles of just how to operate the camera. That's pretty basic, but it's like, I have to say it. Make sure you have power. Don't spend all your money on a camera and not spend it on batteries as well, and you get caught. It's like that's a big thing. So let's go to composition. Composition next in cinematography. Composition is That's the art part, you know. When you are getting coverage, and just last episode, um, Catherine Goldschmidt said something that still sticks with me. She talked about coverage, and like traditional coverage. You have your wide, your medium, and your close. Well, what are you trying to say in your photography? What's the perspective? Like, what's different? And that comes with experience and a little bit of film theory, but also too just composition. Like, are you composing something on the thirds? Is it symmetrical? Is it asymmetrical? Um, is there a ton of headspace? Is it a wide shot to isolate a character? Is it a close up to really connect with that character? Um, is it a close up on a wide angle lens to, kind of distort, their face a little bit because of some random story plot or conflict, whatever. So just understanding those things, understanding composition and how that helps your story is one thing that you really need to pay attention to, because otherwise your shots, your cinematography, the way that you film is basic. It looks like everybody else's, and there's just not any char- excuse me, not any character to it. So next on the list is lighting. More times than most, people will say that lighting is more important than the camera that you shoot on, the lens that you shoot on. Um, I think lighting is very important, but I don't necessarily think that it's the most important. I think it's up there for sure, but I can't say that there's one important thing that I would give priority to, because for me, like, true, great, masterful cinematography is a compilation of all these things. But with that being said, understanding lighting is pretty close to the top of the list. So know the difference between, like hard light, soft light, Rembrandt lighting versus split lighting. Know, ratios, and, what a 2-to-1 ratio on the face looks like versus a 8-to-1, and what that means. Learning how to use a light meter, um, or just understanding it, because I mean you can meter with monitors and false color and all the different tools now, but just understanding lighting ratios is very important. So not only understanding the light that is actually hitting your subject or location, but understanding how light operates, and um, how a certain piece of gear, a certain um, light that you may rent, like, you need to understand, how much wattage it consumes. You need to know, some of that. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to know all of it, but you can't, be trying to throw up, a bunch of M40s into like a housebreaker, and think that, oh, okay, well, I have all these powerful lights. Let me just throw this 5K sky pan up, to give me a ton of light through this window at this house, and think that you'll be able to do it. So lighting is super important. And that's, another thing that you really need to understand. Next on the list is camera movement. That's, I mean, you can't just, I mean, you can just, only put a camera on sticks and then just masterfully, you know, frame up shots and not move the camera at all. Um, that's an aesthetic for sure. But understanding camera movements, what they're called, like what what the purpose is for them, having motivated movement, and not just randomly moving the camera back and forth or up and down, um, you know, having a stabilizer that it just causing people to be seasick. Yeah, don't do that. Understand camera movement. We talked a little bit about composition, um, with framing shots and the shot types. We didn't talk about lenses. I am a lens nerd. I love lenses. I like opening up lenses and see how they work. And sometimes being able to put them back together properly, other times not. But that's just part of it, for me at least. Um, I love like everything about lenses, the characteristics, knowing and understanding what type of coating a lens may have, chromatic aberration, if a lens is sharp in the center versus around the edges, is there vignetting? Like are you shooting spherical versus anamorphic? And, also keeping into perspective sensor size, which goes back to knowing your camera. What type of sensor it is? Is it a Super 35 sensor? Is it a full frame? That's going to affect your perspective with the lens. So, yeah, lenses, awesome. And that's just one piece of the puzzle because you could add filtration to it. And there's so many different types of glass that you can put in front of your lens. There's other materials that you can put on a UV filter and put grease on your lens or get a stocking and wrap it around your lens. Like it's the 1940s. I mean, you could, do whatever you want to create and craft a look. So that's also a strong part of just cinematography and being creative with your shots and your story and, just cinematography as a whole. So we talked a little bit about lenses, depth of field. And this is something that I kind of want to talk to the people that are just getting into cinematography. There are many ways that you can create depth in an image. It's not just getting a fast lens, sticking on a 50 and bringing up the aperture to 1.2. So, it's a super shallow depth of field and the eyes are barely in focus. Yeah, that's an element of depth, but there's more to it than just that. I mean, yes, you can have depth with the lens. You can have depth with the lighting, with the lighting intensity and, playing from, like when you talk about dynamic range, the hottest of hots with white and the darkest of darks with black and, all the gradations of gray within that. That's creating depth with the lighting. But also too, I mean, there's color depth and you can do that with the lighting as well. So you could have different color temps going on in your image, or you could have color depth with your production design and your wardrobe. I mean, your job is to make sure that the image looks good and that includes knowing where to point the camera, picking the location, working with the production designer to figure out wardrobe. And if there's not a production designer, understanding color and not, shooting on a white wall with a white shirt, and a whole bunch of white props, unless that's the aesthetic of whatever you're doing. But yeah, color depth. That's a huge one as well. And, just perspective as well. And perspective, I mean, we talked about the lens depth with, the aperture, but is it a low angle pointed up? Are you pointed into a corner? Like like the perspective and the distance from, where the camera is to the subject. That creates depth as well. So yeah, I mean, depth is something to be studied for sure. To just continue to help you craft better images. And we talked a little bit about color. I'm not going to go super in depth with that because that's self-explanatory, and there's a ton of videos on YouTube about color as well as exposure. But just knowing how to expose, knowing why you should expose a certain way, making choices that are deliberate, because like you're the artist. Like if it's right to you, then it's right to you. It may be wrong to everyone else educationally, but if you like how you do something exposure wise, then okay. But with that being said, there's a ton of exposure tools out there, to learn how to at least get proper exposure before you start jacking it up. Talking about being creative. Storytelling, that was something that I wrote down, and that is that's a tough one because you just need to study how to tell better stories. You need to live life and listen to stories, watch movies, like learn from the greats of how to become a better storyteller. Visually, because I mean that's what cinematography is. Um, and then lastly, we talked a little bit. I mentioned about just pre-pro and the post-production side of things. Like the job is always happening, on a project from a cinematography perspective. So like you're only as good as much pre-pro as you can get done. But then also too, like you have to execute that pre-pro. And that's something that I've learned. Like, I've in this last 3 features that I've done, the series that I just finished, you do a ton of pre-pro, but if you're not communicating with either the directors, the executive producers, the studio, whatever, and you're not able to effectively, execute that pre-pro, then you're just wasting a bunch of time. And you're just working, just to work. Like, do the pre-pro, but make sure that you follow the pre-pro in production. And I'm speaking that based off of experience, obviously, from the last few things, if I'm bringing it up like that. So lastly, just remembering to always kind of keep track of what's going on in the industry. Whether it's different things that are coming out from a technology standpoint, or I mean, it is September of 2023 right now, and U.S. is going through the strike, with the writers and SAG, and like how weird would it be if I was just like, wait, what strike? What's going on? Like, yeah, you have to stay current, just on what's happening in the industry, whether it's from a social, political side, or, whether it's the newest camera that came out. And you don't have to know all the specs, but, just know that, there's a new camera that came out that people get excited about. And this is just a reminder to get out there and shoot. Like, just keep shooting, practice, do what you can to stay sharp. And I'm not just saying about focus. Um, so stupid. But like you just have to, be focused. Like keep your eyes on the prize, which, like people have different measures of success and different definitions of success. Success to me has always been what I have been doing, which is doing narrative work, and getting narrative jobs that I love, that allow me to be creative, being able to be a freelancer, and still take my daughter to school and my son, like be able to, when I'm at home, truly, truly be at home and spend time with family. Um, but then also too, like just knowing that I have the flexibility that when I'm on work, I'm there, like I'm living completely in a moment. People could be calling, texting. I'm not gonna get it until I'm offset. Um, that's me. That's what I feel like success is in my life. Um, like cinematography. That's just kind of like the big overview for where I am currently. And just know that, like, I mean, there's a lot of things that I said that won't necessarily change when it comes to cinematography and just what it is. But, everyone changes, cinematography changes, taste in what you shoot change. Yeah, like just letting you know, like get out there, experiment, keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully this podcast has either taught you something, reminded you about something that maybe you either just forgot about. Sometimes we get into like a pattern that we just continue to do the same things. And you can't do that and expect different results. You have to, you know, you have to put yourself out there. You have to continue to learn. You have to continue to experiment and grow within that. And sometimes, and this is dad less talking. I was teaching my daughter, who is now 5, which is crazy to think that I started this podcast and she was not even born. Um, but I was telling my daughter the importance of being a good loser. And that sounds funny, but she didn't win a game. She lost, and she was just heartbroken, sore loser, this and that. And that's just a key principle in life. Like when you lose, sometimes it's just as important how you lose as it is how you win. And any successful business person will tell you that, their successes came with a ton of failures. And it's the same thing with cinematography. I mean, I look at the images that I get now and I'm like, oh, wow, like I'm pretty impressed. Like I'm happy with, like what it's turned out to be. But then I look at things that I've done in the past and it's the face palm, the oh my gosh, I can't believe I shot this and I thought it was good. Yikes. But with that being said, I started. I just put myself out there. And even with the podcast, like I started this podcast, I had no idea that anybody would listen to it at all, like in the slightest. And since then, I've been able to have really, really cool conversations with some of the best cinematographers in the world, in my opinion, which has been amazing to have those conversations. And yeah, I want to be able to have conversations with you, on your journey into cinematography as well. So with that being said, remember to send out that light bulb emoji, whether it's on, well, yeah, let's keep it to Instagram. Unless you're on TikTok, then find me on TikTok. But I don't really, if it's not Instagram, if it's not TikTok, then like I haven't really been on all the newest, hippest social things. But yeah, I mean that's it. That's all I got for this podcast. Thanks so much for listening. And yeah, if you have any questions, hit me up. I mean, it's 2023. Like, my name is Les Gaddis. Like, find me. Like, if you're having issues with trying to figure out or connect with someone and you can't, then either they're really really famous and there's a gatekeeper, which that's understandable, or you're just being lazy. And this is old man Les telling all of you that you need to get up off your ass and reach out to people. Like, it doesn't have to be me. The person that you want to most connect with, go to your computer, get it on your phone, Google that name, figure out how you can reach out to them to have a cup of coffee, talk to them, potentially learn from them, or, like, just connect, because, like, that's another part of, navigating this industry is connections and networking. I know you want to, say, hey, the reason why I got into cinematography is because I'm behind the camera. I get it. But, like, you'll stay behind the camera, and get very few calls if you don't reach out or open your mouth. So, I want the best for you. That's why, I mean, it's like there's like some cinematography love, but then there's some cinematography, get your ass up there, and shoot this shot, or, reach out to this person. Like, I gotta talk firmly sometimes, for people to really understand that, man, this is not for the faint of heart. Like, if you want to last in this industry, then you're gonna be put through the ringer. Like, if you want something easy, go fucking work at any other, like, go flip burgers. Like you'll make more and you'll have less stress working at In-N-Out, And I mean, there's no shade to people that work at In-N-Out, or like, just you gotta stick with it, because the overnight success is usually a 10-year process where you start looking at people and you're like, oh man, like, how did I just hear about you? You're an overnight success. And they're like, well, yeah, I've been working on this since 1995. Yeah, I'm rambling. Okay. Go, be great. Like, I appreciate you. If no one told you today that they love you, I love you. And I mean it. Whoever you are. Be inspired.
Thanks for listening to Capturing Light with Les Gaddis, a Director of Photographers podcast. Inspiring and educating filmmakers like you so you can illuminate your vision. A Gaddis Visuals production.